So you're rolling through logical reasoning, you're hitting your stride, predicting conclusions, eliminating traps, and everything feels under control. Then a parallel reasoning questions appears. It's a full page stimulus. You scroll and it keeps going. You scroll again and it still keeps going. And you're thinking to yourself, why are all five answers basically essays? You reread the first sentence three times and somehow you understand less each time that you read, and your eyes start to glaze over, you start to panic, and that is parallel reasoning. And it's not just hard, it's kind of like a time vampire where it's draining your minutes, your focus, and your confidence. But here is the truth no one tells you. These questions aren't hard because they're complicated, they're hard because they look complicated. And once you strip away the story and you look at the skeleton underneath, they become predictable and almost boringly mechanical. Now, the reason that they're so hard is because they have two weapons they're using against you. They have length and they have abstraction. The length, the sheer number of words, makes you anxious, and the abstraction makes you second guess yourself. You see sentences like, the committee that fails to enforce regulations undermines its own authority, and you think to yourself, I know what these words mean individually, but together I have no idea. And that is not your fault. The LSAT writers know that your working memory can only hold about 7 ideas at once simultaneously, and so they write arguments with 8 ideas. The trick is not to read faster, the trick is to read structurally. I want you to forget what the argument's about and instead focus on how the author moves from the premises to the conclusion. And that is all you need. Now, when you hit a parallel reasoning question, do not read the answers first. They are traps. First, you find the conclusion. Ask yourself, what is the author trying to prove? You want to look for signal words like therefore, thus, it follows that, hence, and so. Sometimes it's subtle. This suggests that, or we can infer that. When you see those words or phrases, mark them mentally and also note the tone. Is it certain? Is it probable? Or is it a recommendation? That tone will become your filter later. Then step 2, find the premises. Ask, what reasons does the author give? Are they facts, rules, statistics, examples, analogies, whatever they are? Circle them mentally. Every conclusion is riding on those. Then step 3, you label the reasoning. Is it conditional, like an if-then? Is it causal, like because X, therefore Y? Or is it comparative, or is it quantitative based, like all, most, or some? Then step 4, you check the validity. Does the conclusion truly follow from those premises? Or is there a hidden jump? Is there an assumption, a correlation error, or a new term? If it's airtight, it's valid. If there's a leap, it's flawed. That's it. Now let's get practical, because everyone watching this right now falls somewhere in these 3 stages. If you are a beginner, if you're new to the LSAT, your only job is to ID the conclusion and its support. Ignore everything else. Say in your own words, they're claiming X because of Y. If you can do that 10 times in a row, you've built the foundation that most people skip. If you are at an intermediate level, then you add the reasoning type and the tone. For example, this is a causal argument with a strong conclusion. And you want to start noticing whether the premises guarantee or suggest. You want to label the strength of the conclusion. Is it must, is it probably, or is it should? Then if you are more of an advanced test taker, this is where you abstract the logic and you have the potential, the option to label everything in formulas. You translate, like if X then Y, X therefore Y, or most X's are Y's, Z is X, therefore probably Y. And you will start recognizing these kinds of templates across the entire test. Once you can name them, the LSAT stops being a reading test and it starts being a pattern recognition test. Now, there are 2 types of parallel questions, standard parallel reasoning, and then there's parallel flaw. In parallel reasoning, the original argument is typically valid or at least fairly reasonable. I say typically, not always, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. And your job is to find another argument that is the same way, has the same underlying structure. If it's parallel flaw, They are explicitly telling you that the original argument is broken. And so your job is to find another argument that breaks in the exact same way. So if the argument jumps from all A's are B's to some B's are A's, that's somewhat of a reversal. And your answer must reverse in the same way, not just talking about similar topics. So as a quick test, you can ask, could this conclusion logically follow? If yes, you match. If no, then you're matching flaws. Now, parallel reasoning questions are a bit of an endurance challenge, but I don't want you to let them kill your rhythm. As a general benchmark, 2 minutes max on your initial pass. If you hit one early that looks like a novel, just flag it, skip it, come back later. Now, when you do attempt it, first, read the stimulus carefully. Spend your first 40 seconds just building a blueprint of the structure, understanding the underlying skeleton. Then you scan the conclusions in the answer choices first. If there's a mismatch in tone, you knock it out. Then you check the reasoning type. If the argument is conditional, but the answer is causal, you knock it out. Then you also check validity. If the argument is flawed, but the answer is valid reasoning, you knock it out. So you could hypothetically eliminate the 4 wrong answers in less than a minute, just looking at the tone, the reasoning, and validity by themselves. Then you confirm the 1 remaining answer. And if you're still unsure after 2 minutes, again, guess, flag, move on, come back later. You don't want to let one question cost you 3 others. Now, there are a number of limited traps the LSAT writers use again and again. The first is the topic match trap, where the stimulus and the choices contain the same topic, the same subject, but topic doesn't matter. Only the logic matters. The second trap is a reasoning mismatch, where let's say the stimulus is conditional, the answer is causal. If the conclusion tone is the same, but there's a different logic, it's wrong. Then you have a validity mismatch trap, where let's say the argument is flawed, but the answer is valid, or vice versa. You knock it out because the validity did not match. Finally, you have a language reuse trap, where they copy phrases from the argument into the choice, but the structure is not the same. So again, if the skeleton does not match, it is wrong, no matter how familiar the words feel. Now, most LSAT students practice wrong. They'll do 10 questions, check the answer, and move on. But you've got to look at structure, validity, and the traps during your review process. So as you're reviewing, you map out the structure of the argument. You ask yourself, was the reasoning valid or was it flawed? Then you look for the trap that you might have fallen for. You could, for example, as a test, as an exercise, do a rebuild drill where you create your own argument using the same structure. So for example, let's say that you had a stimulus where they said all red cars are fast, blue cars are slow, purple must be medium speed. The flaw there would be a false compromise. Your own parallel for that could be something like all cold drinks are cheap, hot drinks are expensive, warm drinks must be mid-priced. Same logic, again, a flaw, of course, different topic. That's how you teach yourself the pattern of the argument. So another example, let's say we had an argument saying all employees who meet deadlines get promoted. John meets deadlines, therefore John gets promoted. Conditional reasoning. If X then Y, X happened, therefore Y happens. Now, totally different topic. All plants that get sunlight grow. This plant gets sunlight, therefore it grows. Different subject, but same structure. That is a correct parallel reasoning match. Now, a flawed version would say most plants that get sunlight grow. This plant gets sunlight, therefore it grows. All became most, not logically equivalent. That's what you want to be on the lookout for. Now, why does this matter so much? Because parallel reasoning mirrors what you do in law school. In law school, they're not asking you to memorize facts. They are asking you to compare reasoning. Who argued what precedent applies? Does this new case, this new situation or new scenario, does it match the logic of the old one? That is all parallel reasoning is. It is matching precedents. Every time you strip away the surface and look for the structure, you are training the exact muscle that lawyers use in legal writing. Phrases like by analogy or similarly situated parties. Now let's zoom out because this is not about memorizing, it's about precision. And so when you hit one of these on test day, don't panic. Just say to yourself, conclusion, premises, reasoning, valid or flawed, that is it. You're reading for the logic, for the structure, for the skeleton, and they do not care about the topic. If you can train yourself to see the structure, parallel reasoning becomes free, easy points. Now, we're going to get into several parallel reasoning example questions. Before we do, a quick ask. I don't do any advertising for these free classes. They only grow through word of mouth. The algorithm does not boost live streams because they can't run ads during these. And so if you're finding these classes helpful, I'm running them every single day, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Please spread the word, share it in your group chat, in your Discord, in your Slack channel, wherever you're studying with others. I really appreciate your support in spreading the word. And if you would like my help, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons to everybody out there watching this. You can book your free call with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube, link pinned in the comments. Now, I've got several LSAT questions to cover together with you today. I've got the first one up here on the screen, number 1. We're going to work through several examples together. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D, but do commit to something. And if you're not sure, just drop a question mark. But again, commit now because you'll have to commit on test day as well. So the first example is up there on the screen. Artificial intelligence cannot be defined as a system that only generates conclusions from data it directly observes. Since there are many events, AI systems predict without ever observing them. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. But again, do commit to something. A, journalism cannot be the act of reporting firsthand experiences since many impactful reports are based on information gathered secondhand. B, data science cannot be the process of finding meaning in patterns since some data sets contain noise rather than patterns. C, education cannot be the transfer of knowledge from teacher to student since students sometimes learn without teachers. D, climate modeling requires comprehensive global data collection, but such collection is currently infeasible. Or E, architecture cannot be the creation of livable structures since many buildings are uninhabitable. You see, there's a lot of words in these questions, but when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. But do give me a gauge of where you stand so that I could better advise and direct these classes going forward. Not as easy as the previous classes, huh? Last time, the other ones I was giving you easier drills. These are a bit more challenging, certainly a lot wordier. Chris is asking, is this recorded? Yes, this is recorded on YouTube at the same link that you might be watching this on right now on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. We got some folks giving their answers in the chat. Adam says B, Autumn says A, Erica says C. So look for matching degrees of certainty in the conclusion and also the qualifying or quantitative statements in the evidence. We got some more folks giving answers here. Zuli says A, welcome Zuli. Erica says A, welcome Erica. Passion says A. Valentina says C. So a mix of A's, B's, and C's for the answers here. The answer is in fact A. Journalism cannot be the act of reporting firsthand experiences since many impactful reports are based on information gathered secondhand. So all 5 choices had cannot in the conclusion, right? But A had since many matching in the argument, the initial stimulus, since there are many. B said since some. C said since students sometimes. And so folks were choosing A, B, and C, but again, A had since many are based on information gathered secondhand, meaning it's possible to gather the reports without firsthand because they can do it secondhand. So that's why A is in fact the match. Next, number 2. A company should choose a cloud provider that has experienced a data breach in the last 5 years. The average cloud provider experiences one breach every 5 years. So if a company has not been breached recently, its odds of being breached soon are higher. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A lottery number that hasn't been drawn for months, so it's due to win soon. B, a soccer player hasn't scored all season, but his training has improved, so he's now more likely to score next game. C, if the average smartphone fails every 3 years and a phone has lasted 3 years without issue, it's now more likely to break. D, if an app hasn't crashed recently, it's more likely to crash next time. E, since one of 2 rival companies has had a security incident recently, the other is now more likely to have one. So A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, D, E. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but please do commit to something. All right, so we have some answers coming into the chat. Let's see. Erica says C. Autumn says C. Passion says C. Zuli says C. Awesome, folks. You nailed it. The answer is, in fact, C. I see Michael says C as well. Welcome, Michael. Yes, so the answer is C. This is the gambler's fallacy. Note how the question stem does not explicitly tell us that the reasoning is flawed, but we have to note that it's flawed in the stimulus. So we have to look for a choice exhibiting the exact same flaw. So well done, folks. The 3 years with the smartphones in choice C matches the breach every 5 years in the stimulus. So there's a match in the logic there. I see Valentina got C also. Fantastic. Well done, folks. Next, number 3. For people to make informed voting decisions, the policies must be explained in clear everyday language. The mayor's statement just did that. So now the public might finally make informed decisions. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, one must have a working password to access an account. Kim reset her password, so she might be able to log in. B, to complete the marathon, you must finish all training runs. Alex did the training, so he must complete the marathon. C, to cook a great meal, one must follow the recipe. Ben followed the recipe, so he might have cooked a great meal. D, to pass the class, you must submit every assignment. Dana submitted them all, so she might pass. E, one must study to become a lawyer. Sarah studied law, so she might become a lawyer. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. I'll give folks another minute. All right, so we have some answers coming in. Jackie says C. Autumn says C with a question mark. Erica says D. Zuli says C. Valentina says C with a question mark. Passion says C as well. So if we look at the logic of the stimulus, they say for people to make informed voting decisions, the policies must be explained in clear everyday language. The mayor's statement just did that. So the mayor fulfilled the necessary condition. So now the public might finally make informed decisions. Not a guarantee that it will, because that would be a reversal of necessary sufficient conditions. But C lines up well with that. To cook a great meal, one must follow the recipe. Ben followed it, so he met the necessary condition. So he might have cooked a great meal. Not a guarantee that he would, but possible that he would. Running through some of the others. A, one must have a working password. Kim reset her password, but that's following the same direction, right? For B, to complete the marathon, you must complete all training runs. Alex did the training, so suggesting he did the runs, so he must complete the marathon. Not a match, but C matches perfectly. Now looking at D, to pass the class, you must submit every assignment. Dana submitted them all, so she might pass. That one's lining up as well, actually, I think. One must study law to become a lawyer. Sarah studied law, so she might become a lawyer. So this drill, I will admit, was not a great one because it looks like there were multiple correct answers here. I'll have to look at my process for creating these. But yes, C is a perfect match for it. D and E also look pretty good. B and A do not match, though. Next, number 4. The Clean Planet Directory lists every national regulation except those involving trade or defense. Carbon emission caps involve neither trade nor defense, so the directory includes them. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, the museum catalog includes all artists except those who paint abstracts or sculptures, provided the artist has exhibited in the last year. B, the Tech Expo invites every company except those in finance or military tech, unless booth space is full. C, the city's recycling program accepts all plastics except styrofoam and PVC. Water bottles are not styrofoam or PVC, so they're accepted. D, the online store sells all books except textbooks and magazines, except for out-of-print titles. E, the scholarship fund awards grants to all students except those majoring in medicine or business, subject to available funds. So when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but please do commit to something since you'll have to commit on test day. All right, so we have a bunch of answers coming in here. Let's see, Autumn says C, Jackie says C, Michael says C, Erica says C, Valentina says C. So notice how this is following the same exact flow of the argument in the stimulus. Everything except 2 specifics. In the stimulus, trade or defense. In choice C, styrofoam or PVC. So those 2 are the exceptions. Therefore, if it's not those 2, they are going to be accepted. Perfect match. Same exact flow. Noam Almog notes here, C is the only one with a conclusion. Yeah, let's see, is that true? Yeah, well done, exactly. So they're accepted. That's also a good tell for that one. Nice. And Passion says C. Fantastic. Well done, folks. All right, so next we're going on to number 5. Our fitness tracker must give accurate calorie readings because only health-conscious people buy it, and we know they're health-conscious because they buy products with accurate calorie data like ours. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, this app must be reliable because tech experts use it, and we know they're tech experts because they use reliable apps. B, this news source must be credible because smart people read it, as verified by third-party fact checks. C, this car must be eco-friendly because environmentalists drive it based on its certified emissions report. D, this skincare brand must be natural because dermatologists recommend it per board-certified reviews. Or E, this diet plan must be effective because fit people follow it per randomized trial results. All right, so we got some answers coming in here. Jackie says A, Erica says A, Autumn says A, Zuli says A, Valentina says A, Passion says A. Mariam has a question mark, not sure. Totally cool. Thank you for being honest, Mariam. So yes, the answer is in fact A. How do we know that? Because just like the stimulus said, we know they're health conscious because they buy products with accurate calorie data like ours. That matches up with we know they're tech experts because they use reliable apps. So the first half of the argument seemed to match for pretty much all 5 choices, but the second half of choice A is where we get a similar match to the argument with that additional confirmation. We know they're health conscious. We know they're tech experts. Well done. So we're 5 drills in here. Out of these 5, please share in the chat how many did you get right? Were you 5 for 5? Were you 4 for 5? 3 for 5, and so on? Just do me a favor and share where you're at so I can get a gauge of how folks are doing so far running through these. And of course, these are harder than the drills we were doing earlier this week and last week. So if you're having some difficulty with these, totally to be expected. All right, so we see here, let's see, Autumn got 5 out of 5. Awesome. Valentina, 4 out of 5. Michael, 4 out of 5. Passion, 5 out of 5. Awesome, Passion. So folks are doing pretty well overall. Nice, fantastic. Mariam, by the way, I was looking for this session everywhere, LOL. And so if you're looking for it, always 2 p.m. Eastern time on the live tab of the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel is where you can find these sessions every weekday. Let's see, Jackie was 4 for 4. Zuli was 5 for 5. Awesome. Well done, folks. You're nailing it. Doing great. Next one, number 6. The budget for our laptops is $1,000 each. The Dell model fits within that limit. So it must also, the Lenovo model is cheaper, so it must also fit within the limit. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, the theater's capacity is 500 seats, show A nearly sold out, and show B sold even more tickets, so it must have sold out too. B, the calorie limit for a snack varies by person. The protein bar fits within one person's limit, and the fruit cup has fewer calories, so it fits too. C, the car that costs $40,000 is affordable, and the SUV that costs $38,000 must be affordable too. D, the recommended page count for the report is under 50. The first report meets it, and the second is shorter, so it qualifies. Or E, the online file limit is 20 megabytes, one file fits, and another is smaller, so it must fit too. So when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. And if you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. I'll give folks a minute, but I do see some answers starting to drop in here. Mariam says E with a question mark. Jackie says E. Zuli says E. Anne says E. Noam asks, is this circular reasoning or mistaking necessary for sufficient? Noam says E. So I actually don't think this is either circular or mistaking necessary for sufficient. I don't think there's a flaw here. The budget was $1,000. Dell fits within that. If Lenovo is cheaper, it's also going to fit within the limit. That's valid, right? If Lenovo was, say, $800 and the budget was above 1,000 or within 1,000, then we're good. And so E, in fact, is the answer. If the online file limit is 20 megabytes, one file fits, another is smaller than that one that fits, so it must fit also. If a smaller thing, if a given, let's say X fits, and then half of X fits also, then if half of X also is smaller, then it's going to fit too, right? It's a match. Mariam says, this is kicking me in the gut, LOL. Yeah, so some of these are hard. I mean, Zuli says, I've taken the LSAT. Your questions are not hard. The ones on the LSAT were. Well, first of all, when you're doing questions in an actual tested environment where things are timed, it's going to be a more stressful situation. It's going to be harder. You're likely to get more wrong. In a more relaxed environment where the stakes are not high and it's not going to count, then you're not going to be as stressed, right? So that's only natural. So I think that some are on the actual LSAT, some are harder than these, some are easier, some are in the middle. Autumn says, why not A? The theater's capacity is 500 seats. Show A nearly sold out, and show B sold even more tickets, so it must have sold out too. Well, they said show A nearly sold out, show B sold even more tickets. So let's say show A nearly sold out, maybe it was 450, but show B sold 451 or 475, doesn't automatically mean it's sold out, right? So A's logic is not valid, whereas the logic in the stimulus was valid. So I hope that clears that one up. We got a question about D. D is concluding qualifying based on evidence that one meets a recommended page count. Recommended page count for the report is under 50. First report meets it, and the second is shorter, so it qualifies. Well, we want them to meet the page count, right? So the recommended page, so if the second is shorter, that means maybe it didn't meet the recommended page count, right? So if the first report was 50, was under 50, it's a little bit unclear there whether meeting the page count, meeting the recommendation is to hit the number or to be within the number, right? So we don't know if we're doing what they wanted us to do. Question about C. So C says the car that costs $40,000 is affordable. The SUV that costs $38,000 must be affordable too. Yeah, I actually think C is a pretty good match as well. The accredited answer here for this one was E as an echo. I think that C's logic is the same. The flow of the choice is not the same though, right? So the flow of the choice here is not matching quite the same because the flow is the Lenovo model is cheaper, and in E, one file fits, another is smaller, so it must fit also. C is leading with specifics of the size or the dollar amount. E is not fitting the flow of the size, quite the same, so it's not paralleling the structure, but the logic of C is a good match as well. And so yes, no, these are not official LSAT questions due to copyright constraints. We're not permitted to display actual official LSAT content here on the channel. I would like to clarify that going forward, or maybe find a way to make it work better. But for now, due to intellectual property constraints, we can't display actual official content. So these are unofficial drills. I wish it were not the case, but that's what we got to run with. Next, number 7. The government should not require cyclists to wear helmets. After all, people are allowed to jog near traffic without helmets, and jogging by cars is riskier than biking with one. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, teachers shouldn't assign homework since students are allowed to study voluntarily, and that's even harder. B, drivers shouldn't need licenses since pedestrians walk in traffic without licenses and walking near cars is riskier. C, cafes shouldn't require hand washing since customers eat outside without washing hands, which is less sanitary. D, officers shouldn't enforce deadlines since freelancers aren't forced to meet deadlines and they often perform better. Or E, cyclists should wear reflective gear since pedestrians must use crosswalks, which are safer. So when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. And if you're not sure, just put a question mark, but do commit to something. So we got some answers coming in here. Passion says B, Mariam says B, Jackie says B, Zuli says B. Valentina says B. Autumn says B. Erica says B. Noam says I like A. So the answer here, the correct response is in fact B as in Bravo. Drivers shouldn't need licenses since pedestrians walk in traffic without licenses and walking near cars is riskier. So the licenses are analogous to wearing helmets. Drivers are analogous to the cyclists, and basically saying that if you're going near the cars, jogging by cars is riskier than biking with a helmet. Similarly, walking near cars is riskier than walking in traffic without a license. So there's a parallel structure here with these. All making sense? Okay, next, number 8. Learning to code raises students' GPA. After all, students who take programming classes tend to have higher GPAs than those who don't. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, drinking coffee boosts happiness. Coffee drinkers report higher happiness after accounting for sleep. B, joining the debate club improves intelligence. Members score higher after training. C, buying running shoes increases fitness. Those who own multiple pairs work out more. D, reading bedtime stories makes kids smarter. Those read too often test higher. Or reading bedtime stories makes kids smarter. Those read too often test higher even after income is controlled. And E, taking music lessons boosts math ability. Students in music perform better after the curriculum change. So when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. And if you're not sure, just drop a question mark. We have a couple answers coming in here, but I'll give folks another minute. And by the way, folks, if you want elaboration on any of the questions that we're covering here or parallel reasoning in general, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons to everybody out there watching this. You can book your free lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube, link pinned in the comments, link in my bio on Instagram. I'm happy to elaborate on any of the drills that we're covering and go deeper and help you map out a personal plan of attack for your LSAT prep. So a couple of folks gave answers so far. Let's see. Passion says C. Mariam says I like C. Anne says D. Autumn says C. Jackie says C. Zuli says C. So the answer is in fact C as in Charlie. Buying running shoes increases fitness. Those who own multiple pairs work out more. So it's deepening the association between buying the running shoes and working out more. The more pairs you have, the more that you're going to ultimately work out. Now, B says, I see there was a question from Autumn about why not B, and I see Valentina chose B also. So for choice B as in Bravo, joining the debate club improves intelligence. Members score higher after training. It's thematically aligned. It's not a terrible choice, but C deepens it more by giving us more of a connection, right? So saying the more you increase the shoes, the more that you increase the fitness. The more you increase the classes, the more you increase the GPA. B is a singular event, joining the debate club, joining once. In the stimulus, though, they're taking programming classes on a regular basis. And so C as in Charlie increases the connection between the two better because it's an ongoing relationship. Taking classes going forward, recurring versus joining the debate club one time. B is not terrible, but C is a better match. Next, number 9. All current evidence fits both the AI bias theory and the data sampling theory, but their predictions about next year's results can't both hold true, so the next data set will prove one theory and disprove the other. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, two doctors interpret the same symptoms differently, so the next test must prove one right. B, two investors have models predicting opposite market moves, so tomorrow's results may favor one model. C, two software engineers offer different fixes and both fit current bugs, so the next update will confirm which is right. D, two weather apps predict different temperatures, so the actual temperature will prove one wrong. Or E, two researchers have hypotheses consistent with current evidence, so the next experiment must validate one and invalidate the other. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E, and if you're not sure, just drop a question mark. And yes, and regarding the last one that we did, is what the income being controlled, that was not in the stimulus, so not a similarity. We have some folks dropping answers in the chat. I'll give it another minute. All right, so Passion says E with a question mark. Mariam says E with a question mark. Jackie says E. Zuli says E. Autumn says E. Mariam says, but I like C as well. Okay, so the answer here is in fact E as in echo. Two researchers have hypotheses consistent with current evidence, so the next experiment must validate one and invalidate the other. The validating one, invalidating the other matches up with in the stimulus, prove one theory and disprove the other. So that is the similar structure, similar match, explicitly confirming one, denying the other. Choice C, two engineers offer different fixes, both fit current bugs. So the next update will confirm which is right. Pretty close, but not as precisely a match as validating one and validating the other. E is more explicit in the same structure as the stimulus. And for parallel reasoning, we're always looking for what is most closely parallel, most similar. LSAT gives themselves that wiggle room by saying most in case two of them seemed pretty similar, but one was potentially a better match than the other. Next, number 10. A lightweight laptop is more fragile than a heavy one, but since it's easier to carry, it's the better choice overall because you'll drop it less often. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, a strict diet leaves you hungrier, but helps prevent overeating, so it's healthier. B, a smaller phone battery drains faster, but encourages you to take breaks from screens, so it's better for focus. C, a cheaper lab tablet breaks more easily, but is less tempting to steal, so it's safer to carry. D, a thin notebook tears easily, but keeps your backpack light, so it's better to travel with. E, a minimalist desk lacks storage, but keeps clutter away, so it's more productive. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark, but do commit to something. All right, so we have a big smattering of different answers here. Jackie says B, Zuli says D, Valentina says B, Autumn says E, Passion says C, Mariam has a question mark and says C. So there's not really any consistent trend in what folks are choosing here. Mariam says D with a question mark. So again, no consistent trend here. Let's look at what the argument is saying here. In its conclusion, it's the better choice overall because you'll drop it less often. Is there any choice here out of the 5 that tells us it's the better choice overall? Any of these closest to that? Because they're all saying that there is a drawback to going a particular direction, but there's an overall benefit to it at the same time, like a balance. B says better for focus. C says safer to carry. D says better to travel with. So better to travel with specifically, not necessarily better overall. E says more productive. And A says healthier. So Mariam says D has the word better in it, true. Zuli says E, and says E with a question mark. Zuli says question mark overall. So the question here is, again, which is closest to the stimulus? In the stimulus, they said the lightweight laptop is more fragile, but since it's easier to carry, better choice overall because you'll drop it less often. What can we knock out, right? So B says better for focus. C says safer to carry. D says better to travel with. E says more productive in general. A says healthier overall. All 5 of these are decent. I'll be frank about that. But if we had to choose one, yeah, so Mariam says, I don't think it can be A. So A says a strict diet leaves you hungrier, but helps prevent overeating, so it's healthier overall. So leaving you hungrier, preventing overeating, there wasn't really a big benefit to that one, right? Like in the stimulus, it was more fragile, but it was easier to carry. But leaves you hungrier, but helps prevent overeating. That's not really, the drawback of it is not necessarily a huge benefit. They're trying to sell the drawback as a benefit at the same time, but it's not as clear cut. Whereas in the stimulus, it was easier to carry. So I'm going to knock out A for that reason. B, they said better for focus specifically. C said safer to carrier specifically. D said better to travel with specifically. E said more productive. I would say more productive is the closest that we have to being better choice overall, because it's more clear cut. It's less qualified. So ultimately, I'm going to say that E is the answer for this one. Again, not a super clear question, but I think it's the best we've got out of these choices. Mariam says no. All right, so we're 10 of these in so far, folks. Out of these 10, how did you do so far? Were you 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10? Wherever you're at in your accuracy levels, please drop your answer in the chat so we can get a sense of where you're at, gauge your results, get a sense of where you're scoring, because of course that data is actionable information. If your accuracy is low, parallel is a good place to focus. If your accuracy is high, maybe you want to focus somewhere else. Zuli is at 9.5 out of 10. Awesome. Jackie is 8 out of 9. Valentina says these questions are difficult. Yeah, they are. And parallel is a harder type. Valentina says 7 out of 10. That's still pretty good. Autumn says 9 out of 10. Passion says 8 out of 10. Mariam says 4 out of 10, but you came late. So only judge yourself based on what you actually were here for, what you actually attempted, because we can't penalize you for what you weren't attending for. Are you folks liking these harder questions, by the way? I know that we were doing easier drills, and the accuracy levels were all super high. Once we got into parallel, maybe the accuracy dropped a little bit, or at least the speed slowed down a bit, but we're still making pretty good headway, I think, like in the harder ones. Okay, cool, Autumn, good to know. Yeah, so Autumn, yeah, Mariam E is ultimately the answer, yeah. Cool, okay, so we'll continue with harder questions going forward. Jackie says, I actually love this. Awesome, I appreciate that. I'll keep showing up, keep doing more of these classes for you, again, every day, 2 p.m. Eastern. Glad you're liking it. Yeah, so let's continue. Number 11. The average cost of digital subscriptions will rise next month. Therefore, Netflix and Spotify prices will both go up. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, the average temperature this summer will increase, so every city will be hotter. B, the average smartphone price will drop, but premium flagships may rise. C, the average rent will rise, though your lease is fixed. D, the average commute time will decrease, but the construction varies by route. Or E, the average food cost will rise, but some restaurants absorb costs. So A, B, C, D, or E, when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. And if you're not sure, just put a question mark, but commit to something. Awesome. So we got some folks coming in here. Valentina says A. Jackie says A. Zuli says A. Passion says A. Mariam says I like A. Autumn says A. Sweet. Yeah, well done, folks. So the answer is, in fact, A. The average temperature this summer will rise, so every city will be hotter. That is the best answer. It replicates the flaw that is contained within the argument, right? They didn't tell us explicitly this was a flaw question, but of course it is, because even if the average is increasing, does not mean that every single one will increase at the same time. But that is the underlying assumption, right? Every city will be hotter. Every single digital subscription will rise next month, even though, of course, there could be exceptions to that, right? It's possible that the average cost increases, but some remain the same or some even decrease. Nice. Well done, folks. Next, number 12. Most teens recognize major social media logos, but fewer than 1% run successful influencer accounts. Therefore, logo familiarity has little to do with becoming an influencer. Which one of the following is most closely parallel in its reasoning to the argument above? A, most people know celebrity names, but few become celebrities, and knowing names is unrelated to talent or exposure. B, most young adults watch fitness videos, but few exercise regularly, so watching fitness videos doesn't promote health. C, many people follow cooking channels for entertainment, but still eat out frequently. D, most drivers recognize car brands, but few buy luxury cars, though brand awareness affects preferences. Or E, most students know their teachers' names, but few get top grades, and knowing names mostly tracks attendance. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. If you're not sure, drop a question mark, but commit to something. All right, so we got a couple answers coming in here. Mariam says A with a question. Jackie says A. Autumn says B. Zuli says B. Valentina says A. Valentina says B. Passion says A. Mariam says this is a dig towards Gen Z, LOL. Yeah, that is the topic for sure. Mariam says I like B as well. So we've got a mix of between A and B, right? So let's look at the difference. A says, and at the end, and knowing names is unrelated. B says, so watching fitness videos doesn't promote health. Now in the stimulus, we end with a conclusion, therefore, right? Therefore, logo familiarity has little to do. A doesn't have a conclusion. It says, and knowing names. But B has a conclusion saying, so watching fitness videos. So B has a conclusion just like the stimulus has a conclusion. But A does not. A is more of a fact set. No conclusion, no argument there, just a bunch of information. And so for that reason, B is actually our answer because it has a concrete conclusion and matches the flow of the stimulus. Making sense? So matching the structure involves having both evidence and conclusion, just like the stimulus. Let's do another number 13. Many tech futurists claim AI will eventually solve all major human problems, making progress complete. But every final innovation in history was later replaced by something that solved what it could not. Therefore, AI won't be the final solution. Which argument uses the most similar reasoning? A rare computer virus spread widely last year, therefore it won't spread again. B, 4 streaming platforms had hits this year, therefore no new platform will. C, your friend has never gone viral on TikTok, despite posting regularly, therefore her next post won't go viral either. D, only a few apps stay popular for a decade, therefore no social platform can last forever. Or E, each startup in this incubator failed to meet investor expectations, therefore the incubator will fail to meet expectations. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, D, or E. If you're not sure, just drop a question mark. And again, folks, if you're having trouble with these, don't despair. These are some of the hardest and most hated questions. If you're struggling with other question types that are more common, like necessary assumption, inference, or flaw, I would start with those before tackling less common types like parallel. But these are consistently harder, more hated questions than others. Now, notice the flow of the argument here. What is the underlying principle? They're saying every supposedly final innovation was later replaced by something else. Therefore, AI won't be the final solution. So people claim AI is going to solve everything. But in the past, up to this point, everything that was supposedly final, we still had other stuff coming along after the fact, right? So the idea being that the previous trend, or the supposed solution will just continue. The supposed solution will be replaced by something else in the future. The past performance is suggestive of future performance as well, is how I would kind of sum up the principle here. So I know a lot of folks here are choosing D. Autumn says D. Zuli says D. Mariam says D. Passion says D. Jackie says D. Valentina says D. Mariam says Gen Z just catching strays left and right. Yes, a lot of references to that today. But I would not say that D is the answer here. Stay popular for a decade, therefore no social platform can last forever. They're not saying that nothing lasts for a short time, therefore it won't last for a long time either. And there's no only a few in the stimulus. Only a few apps stay popular for a relatively longer time. What they're saying here is that everything they predicted would last forever did not last forever. Everything they predicted would solve all problems did not solve all problems because there was always something else coming along later. So past performance, again, dictating future performance. The failures of the past dictating that future failures will also happen. So yes, Zuli, exactly. Thank you, C. So might not seem like it on the surface, really a much harder question than the previous, I think. The friend has never gone viral on TikTok. Therefore, the next post won't go viral either. The previous performance, and the previous failures are suggestive of future failures. The TikTok virality is analogous to the AI, because the AI has not solved things. Previous proposed solutions did not solve things. Therefore, this AI won't be the final solution either. Is it starting to click for folks? Mariam says this is going down the hill real fast. Yeah, the harder question. Yeah, I told you today's class was going to be a bit harder. Making sense? Louis says making sense. Okay, cool. At least one person's with me on this. By the way, folks, again, if you want to talk through these more, I'm always happy to meet. You can book a free tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. Happy to talk you through your situation, to help you craft an action plan for your LSAT prep. Tomorrow, we're going to cover necessary assumption questions. We covered necessary versus sufficient last week. Tomorrow, we're going to cover necessary assumptions, specifically going a bit deeper on that particular question type using the negation test. Again, folks, if you found this helpful, please spread the word. I don't do any advertising for these free classes. This only grows through word of mouth. Tomorrow, every day, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific. Happy to help you all out. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thanks for joining. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Bye all.